Welcome back to the food forest. It's a very exciting time of year because we can actually go around now and see what kind of fruit set on the trees, see what we're gonna get this year. So let's go for a little bit of a walk around the food forest and we'll see what kind of fruit we got. Alright, so right off the hop, I can tell you that I self-pollinated the pawpaws at the top of the pond here. So here's the top of the pond. We've been eating stuff like fiddleheads. I'll quickly actually show you the hascaps because I did pull in a basket of hascaps yesterday off this plant and there's still a few left. So hascaps are coming in and they're like these little blueberry, really small. They're not always that small, but little blueberries. They're a little bit tart, but they're really high in antioxidants, very healthy, and we've been eating these in the mornings. What I said is I'd been self-pollinating the pawpaws. Not self-pollinating, I've been manually pollinating the pawpaws, and this one is actually going to put on some fruit this year. You can see some there. So that's really exciting. So this is our maybe third or fourth pawpaw that we've been able to establish up here in Ontario, Canada. Get it through the winters, and now they're actually making fruit. So maybe none on that one. I don't know if we have one on that one. We've got a couple flowers there that might set fruit. Got another one over here. And I don't think anything on that one. So we do have one up here that is actually fruiting right now. So that's actually really exciting. Okay, let's head up into the actual main section of the food forest. We'll head down to Old Man Walking Trail and look at the other pawpaws and kind of loop around like that. Now the peaches here are just totally loaded up. I've been thinning some of these, didn't thin this one. So let me thin this branch out here and I'll kind of show you what we think about when we're thinning. So in general, when you see a branch like this, you want to pull off 80% of the fruits. The plant itself will drop most of it. You can see that peach leaf curl has been so bad this year. I've been pulling off effective leaves. You don't want to drop them down. Okay, you want to actually get rid of them, so I stick them in my pocket here. But it's actually so bad this year. And you can spray it with a copper fungicide in the fall if you want. I try not to do anything like that. Spray anything on my fruit trees. And if a fruit tree doesn't want to do well and survive, then it doesn't, and I just replace it with something that does. Now, as I'm thinning, I'm not just thinking about cutting the number of fruit down on the actual branch. I'm also thinking about where I want that fruit. So I want the fruit, I'm not sure how well you can see, it's kind of early in the morning. I want the fruit in an area that it has space to actually become a large fruit. So if I have one here growing into that one, I feel like I'm out of focus here, then and they're growing into each other, there's not enough room to have two mature fruit. They'll push into each other, they'll touch at some point, and then you'll get like rotting in areas where they touch. So you really thin quite a bit. Maybe I can keep those two. This one I can probably also get rid of now. And you're really looking to, you know what, I'll even get rid of that one. It's a nice big one. But if you leave too much on, the plant just doesn't have the energy to support it, especially a peach tree that has so much peach leaf curl. What's going to happen with this peach tree is all these affected leaves are going to fall off, and then the tree's going to regrow a bunch of new leaves out of it. And that's going to take a lot of energy for the tree. So you can see this one I've already kind of thinned. So you really want to have, you know, that can have a fruit there, that'll be a fruit, this will be a fruit. Even this, I could get rid of that middle one. So you just have one fruit there, one fruit here. I didn't see this one here trying to grow in between two branches. That fruit's just going to kind of get, you know, it's going to hit the branches. It's not going to do very well. So I was doing this at night and I couldn't see as well. You know, even this, like, that's too many fruit for such a small area. So we're going to go around. I hit most of the tree here last night, but again, it was fairly dark and I couldn't see much. So we'll go around. This is a good example of a fruit that it's going to grow up and it's going to get stuck in between these branches and just have issues. Even that one. So we'll just go around and thin some of these out. And we're actually going to thin out probably 80% or more of the fruit off of this tree. And because of that, we'll get bigger fruit, tastier fruit, sweeter fruit. And if you don't do that, you'll also get branches that are so heavy that they bend down with the fruit and then crack somewhere on your tree and damage it. You can see we've got crack damage here. We used to have a big branch coming out into here, and it was probably the size of like this actual branch. And it got so heavy with all the fruit that the whole thing cracked off. So if you don't want to have something really bad like that happen to your trees, you should come and thin them. Peaches especially seem to put on an absolute ton of fruit. All right, so let's continue the walk through the food forest here. Interesting stuff that I found this year is the elderberry just decided that it didn't like life and it was gonna head out. It was gonna check out. And we do have some growth coming in here. We do have some growth coming in there. So maybe it's not dead for good, but I'll have to come back and trim this back. We've got, yeah, for the most part, this tree has just decided that's it, it's done. Which is really odd because that elderberry was just an absolute monster last year. You can see the currants are just loaded up with fruit, so we're gonna get tons of currants. Super excited. And it's always fun to come out into the food forest and see what is putting fruit on, because you can get a huge flower show like these service berries, but sometimes, you know, you won't get a lot of fruit. But we've got some fruit growing on the service berry, but definitely much less than most years. A lot up top. So we'll let the birds get all the ones up top and we'll get the ones we can reach. And that's kind of how we share with nature. You can see the variegated elderberry here is doing really, really nice. That one's doing well. More currants are absolutely loaded up. I've never had a year of currants where we don't get an absolute massive amount of currants. We've got, is this a graft? So here's one of the grafts on the plums that we did. So you can see the graft is healing over well. And this year, this graft has just decided it's going to put on, what, like 25 fruit? So we'll thin some of these out. But what I'm going to do specifically with the pears here is, if you see a little damage on the side of a fruit, that is probably a sign that a codling moth larva got into it. So we're actually going to wait and see, because the codling moth will actually take out a lot of this fruit. This is the Bosc pears. This graft here is from a Russian pear. So that's kind of fun to make little Franken trees and then see the grafts doing well. That's really, really fun to graft on different varieties on your fruit trees and experiment and learn as you go. These are some of my first grafts. I'm just getting into it, but they're doing well. And we've got fruit all through this tree. So this pear tree is going to absolutely be a stunner. Here's another graft actually. So you can see the graft union there is taken really well. I've taken the paraffin wax off and the cellophane that I wrapped it in, because this is now totally healthy and going to produce a ton. So super exciting. Here's another peach tree. This one is one that's really struggled after it cracked, and I thought it would actually die this year. It is absolutely covered in peach leaf curl again. All the peaches around here are really bad this year. It must be a combination of the warm early spring and then the really cool wet weather we've had recently. But the peach leaf curl at the perfect time when it usually explodes has had very moist weather to really enjoy its life, unfortunately. But even this one's putting on some fruit. I'll probably thin 90% of the fruit off of that one. Okay, let's head in through here. It is getting so vibrant. You know, this used to be a walking path 3 or 4 feet wide, but now we've got you know, the buckthorns coming in, widening the path up. The hascaps are widening the path up, and everything is just so vibrant. We've got tons of hascaps in there. Pretty much everywhere you look, I find more and more fruit. And you can see that we've got ground covers of wild carrot coming in, so that's really nice. I did see some of the lupin that I established last year somewhere back here is doing well. Look at these lupin. So that's really nice to see some early bee food. In some areas, lupin can be extremely invasive, like in Nordic countries, but in here, it's actually very hard to get established. These are some of the peach trees that I added maybe just a couple years ago, and they're already actually setting fruit, which is really exciting. And then behind me, try not to spin the camera too much, we've got a little cherry tree that I showed earlier in the season that a deer ate, so this one's going to be fine. It's growing. It was planted at the same time as this cherry, and this one I did see fruit on earlier. Tons of flowers, but this is kind of what I mean, where you'll get a ton of flowers, but not too much fruit. But we do have some fruit on this. So we'll get to try the cherries out on this tree for the first time, which is kind of exciting. But fairly small harvests. So sometimes, you know, that's the fun of it, is you'll get trees setting on huge flower shows like this one did, and then not putting on that much fruit, but you still get really excited when you get some fruit. And this one here, I don't think anything on this one. But I'm seeing little insect nibbles on the leaves, which is actually really nice because that means that my trees are supporting some kind of insect life somewhere. Here's a veteran peach. This one has always been really bad for peach leaf curl. Hasn't produced peaches yet, and we're gonna get our first veteran peaches off this year. And I know, oh, I accidentally hit the flip. I know that these trees look really rough right now, but they'll drop all those peach leaf curl leaves, and then they'll put on a nice set of true leaves. We've got sea buckthorn here that's just finished flowering, so we won't know whether these set fruit for a while. These ones haven't fruited yet. Another peach tree here, and it's got fruit on it. And this is a Flamin' Fury, so this is our first year that we'll have Flamin' Fury peaches. We can probably do a little bit of a taste test on different varieties. We've had a lot of Reliance peaches, but we're just getting absolutely loaded with peaches this year. A couple apple trees in here. The comfrey is just completely covering this apple. So we'll actually pull this comfrey down, kind of stomp it, and that will allow this apple tree to get a little more sunlight. And I would be very surprised if I saw any apples on this. And I don't think I do. So, no apples yet. This bird bath keeps falling over. I'm gonna have to move it somewhere. Essentially what happens, I put it up. I know every time I shoot a video, this thing's on the ground. Everyone probably thinks I'm lazy. But I keep putting it up, and then it keeps falling over. And what happened is we had strawberries in this patch, and I sowed in, it was heavy clay, and I sowed in daikon radishes a while ago to build soil. And what we created is like a little community of like underground gophers and stuff. So I'll plant something, and then the ground shifts a little bit as these creatures make their dens and nests and everything, and it falls over. And one thing that happened is this apple tree here that's behind the buckthorn. The apple tree there, it's got such a severe lean on it because it essentially just kind of fell over sideways when the ground underneath it got pushed away. This is a frost peach, so we're going to get frost peaches this year. This one seems quite ahead of the other ones. Look at the size of some of the fruit there. Again, just tons and tons of fruit on all the peach trees. And an interesting observation is that the frost, despite being absolutely surrounded by peach leaf curl on all sides, is actually fairly free of peach leaf curl. There's a couple of impacted leaves here, but so frost could actually be a consideration. If peach leaf curl is really bad near you, consider planting many frost peaches, and then I will you know, the name of the variety is Frost, and then I'll let you know what those taste like and if it's worth planting them. We've got lots of strawberries in here, putting on some strawberries. So the key with all of this is tons and tons of diversity, so that you have so many different fruit growing, so that each year, if one fruit does really poorly, you've got backups for many different fruit that can grow in your food forest. I'm now down in the swale, and in here we've been eating the asparagus. You can see some of it's here. We've got little creatures on the asparagus, and we've been picking some of it out, but now we're kind of done harvesting it. Maybe we'll grab this guy. So look at the size of this asparagus, and you can actually just eat that raw. Food everywhere. Here's that Russian peach, or Russian pear, sorry, that I have grafted on. And interestingly enough, this pear, where I took the scion wood from, has no pears on it. But I grafted the scion wood to an older pear that's maybe pushing out tons and tons of nutrients through those branches, and they decided to put on like 20 pears in one tiny little branch. So maybe that's kind of an interesting thing if you want to accelerate some of your fruit and try them earlier. If you graft them onto a more, like an older tree, you might be able to get some fruit earlier. So just pull an asparagus food, go out to the backyard grocery store and grab some food. More asparagus here behind us. Jump up onto this ledge. Now here we've got a wall of comfrey, but I do have asparagus behind it. So what I'm going to do is stomp some of this over and open light up to the asparagus. So I want the asparagus to do really well. See, so you can stomp your comfrey over. This is going to protect and mulch the ground. That opens up light on the south side to get into this asparagus, and you can kind of control light in your food forest in this way. Pop out behind here and just look at this. Look at this food forest. It is just so rampant now. Used to have paths in here, and now I have to kind of walk and cut the paths down, and it's really filling in nicely. You can kind of get lost in here. Got a couple apple trees here. And again, I'd be surprised if I had apples on these because they're just so young. And they're also on the north side of these large maples. So they only get sunlight, not really the north, kind of the northwest. So they'll get sunlight only in the evening when the sun's up in the sky, getting sun over the sumacs that border the property. And for anyone who's wondering, these are staghorn sumacs. These are not tree of heaven. So some people say, oh, you've got tree of heaven, but it's actually staghorn sumac, all of this. And they'll put on upward facing clusters of berries in a cone with kind of like a furry outside texture. Here's a linden tree that I planted a few years ago that's just absolutely gigantic. We planted the linden tree because it's a bee favorite, and we planted it at the edge of the property. So here's the road. And what we want to have is any insects that are kind of traveling down open corridors at the corner of our lands will hit a pollinator that they love. They'll get attracted and come into the property. And then while they're here, then they see all of this that's going on. And that's kind of how we want to attract pollinators into our property. At the edges of everything, we want to put things that they love. More asparagus in here. We didn't harvest any from these asparagus because we want this patch here to grow. Here's our thornless blackberry. Kind of been pruning it back so that it's a little bit manageable. And this thing is just loaded up. We're gonna get a ton of fruit on this thing. As always, this thing is just always absolutely a huge producer for us. Okay, so now let's head. So there's a couple ways we could go. We usually go this way, actually, down into the lower area. What we'll actually do is we'll walk this way, and I'll show you this path down into the pond because I don't usually take you this way. So we'll head down here. And this is an area that I don't really mow, but if I don't walk it often enough, then it'll just regrow with various dog strangling vine and other invasives, really. Okay, so this will come out at the wetland filter for the pond, and it'll come out to this plum tree. So this plum tree is absolutely loaded. Look at this. So this is the first year that we're going to get fruit off of this plum tree. So it's really, really exciting for me. You know, every year momentum just builds, and every year it feels like you're getting more and more food. And this year feels like the year that we're really, really gonna have almost problems with how much food that we're producing out of this food forest. I'm really glad that I took up a hobby like pickleball. We kind of picked that up in the last year, and it's been super fun. And one of the things that's nice about that is a huge social network that we've created of friends. And it'll be really fun this year to bring all of this fruit into our pickleball sessions and show people how much food we're producing, and maybe hook some people into permaculture at the same time. We've got some cranberries down in here. This is the Old Man Walking Trail that I planted out last year. And again, asparagus all planted through here, cherries, elderberries. A lot of this stuff is super young. So this is some of the youngest stuff I have. I'm expecting zero fruit in here. But what I wanted to do down here is show you the pawpaws. But tons of raspberries. And we're gonna absolutely be loaded with raspberries this year. We're gonna have as many raspberries as we want to pick. It is absolutely not an issue anymore of getting fruit. It's an issue of having the time to go collect the fruit. So maybe we'll open up the food forest to a U-pick for raspberries this year. We'll have to see how busy we are. So here's the pawpaws. This path winds around, so I won't stop here. I'll kind of take us around the winding path just to give you a feel of walking around the property. Food everywhere. And this has been a life dream of planting out food and creating self-sufficiency on the property. It's been really, really fun. I did plant a ton of asparagus in here, and I don't see any. So I wonder if it's just getting smothered by some of these wild creatures down here. Might be getting eaten by deer and stuff. Man, you can tell, you get a little further away from the pond and all the dragonflies. And the mosquitoes are just nasty down here. 100 pawpaw, 1,000 pawpaw. Do you see this? Holy smokes. This is the first time I've seen this tree this year. Holy smokes, this is crazy. I don't know how much of this tree is gonna keep. Oh, it's all the way up. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of pawpaw on that tree. And that was the one that I chose not to self-pollinate. So that's so exciting. Oh my goodness. This one here is the one I did self-pollinate, and it's got quite a few as well. Probably less though. This one had about 10 pawpaw on it last year. And then this one here had about 4 or 5. That we kind of thinned about 15 down to about 4 or 5. And this one's got quite a few as well. But this one I pollinated all the lower branches, but I see a ton of fruit on the upper branches. Oh, this is just so exciting. I do hope that I'm not moving the camera around too much and you guys can see how much fruit is there. Here's some apple trees here. I'm pointing straight in the air. So those have a ton of fruit. All right, so let's keep walking down the old man trail. We're getting devoured by mosquitoes. Sorry if the camera's moving around everywhere. It is incredible how bad the mosquitoes are this year with the cool weather. It hasn't burned them up yet. But at the same time, it's absolutely amazing the difference that having water features on your property is, because up near the pond, there's no mosquitoes at all. People always say, oh, if you put a pond in, you know, how bad are the mosquitoes? Ha ha ha. And they make little jokes like they think they got you. And the pond actually is the best thing that you could possibly do for mosquitoes. Create habitat for frogs to eat the larvae, fish to eat the larvae, and then aerial predators like dragonflies to eat all the hatched mosquitoes. Okay, so this is the area I walked down to the plum, and we'll just walk this way here and take you down through this swale. This is the swale I mentioned a few times. It's up kind of near the house where we do the compost. So they got the compost there, the leachate comes down into this swale. Then we've got some apple trees planted down in here. And this one does seem to be putting on some fruit. So we've got some apples on this one. This one's about a year older. And because it's sitting in this swale, it's just so hyper fertile here. Even though this is surrounded a little bit by the sumac coppice that I run. So I cut these back for emergency firewood, dry it out as well, and make biochar out of it for soil fertility. So we do that with that sumac, but I've been so busy that we didn't do a coppice run this year. So the sumac is starting to get really large. Now I'm shooting this video in one continuous shot because a lot of people have been asking me to edit a little bit less so they can see the food forest and the property and kind of what it feels like to be on it. And we're gonna hop over here and look at the persimmon tree. There's no way that this is gonna have any persimmons on it. It's so young. Another persimmon tree. Cherry tree. This cherry tree, I don't think I saw very many cherries on it, surprisingly. This thing had so many flowers on it. And it's a sweet cherry. I really thought we'd have our first sweet cherries. But I don't think I see any. So that's kind of disappointing. So not a good cherry year. Interesting. Well, there's one. Will I survive? I don't think so. So, a poor cherry here. This is a sour cherry here, and I bet you we've got cherries on this one, because this one's been producing for a while. Yeah, this one's loaded up. So, lots of sour cherries. This tree's doing very well. And then hazelnuts. Not sure if we'll see the hazelnuts setting anything yet, but these always produce. They took a while to get going. This is a slightly older bush. One of the first ones that I did put in. Maybe I put it in on the second year or the third year. You can see the catkins still hanging down. And maybe is that a little hazelnut cluster starting to grow? So they're really small right now, yeah, you can see. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. See the little hairy clusters in there? Maybe that one you can see. So those are the hazelnuts. So nice and small still, but that will be loaded up. Lots of raspberries all through here in its understory. We had some morels early in the spring from under this pine. Morel mushrooms. And then I've shown the kiwi here. I showed this on the last video, but not everyone watches all the videos, so I'll show it quickly here as well. These kiwi, it's a cold hardy kiwi. This is Arguta kiwi, and these are absolutely going to be covered in fruit. These make, it's not the same as a tropical kiwi actually, it's in a completely different family, but they make tiny little grape-sized kiwis. And I'll show you our chickens. We got 2 chickens in. So we've got some olive eggers here. Wonderful, beautiful women. Beautiful little ladies. So we'll get some eggs coming into the backyard now. And they're very, very nice tempered already. I was kind of holding them, getting them used to me. And we've got grapes. So lots of grapes. We always get an absolute ton of grapes on these grape trellises. I actually use most of these grapes to flavor my kombucha. I do a second ferment with the grapes, make a grape flavored kombucha, and it's just so delicious. And they're going to be loaded this year as well. So we grow pretty much anything you can grow here. If it can grow here, we grow it. I'm kind of a bit of a collector of different plants, cold hardy plants. So hopefully this tour here you saw a little bit of a variety of things that you can grow in a cold hardy climate. Absolute producers, crazy producers, grapes, raspberries, apples, pears, peaches. Most of my apples, we have a lot of wild apple trees around us, so most of the apples are actually not on our property. There's a lot of wild apple trees that I know produce really well, so I haven't made a huge priority on planting a bunch of apples on my property. Apples are also something that at the end of the year, because there's so many growers that grow apples, you can get bags and bags of apples for like $1. And then even if, you know, stores went down and times got tough and you really needed self-resiliency on your land, I know so many wild apple trees that I can forage off of. So for us, growing apples doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we don't have too many apple trees, just a few. But we grow the things that we can't buy in the store, and we grow the things that you know, are interesting to talk about, freeze really well, and that way we have a diversity of food, so that there's always something in bloom, there's always something growing in the season to harvest that spreads our harvest season out, makes it manageable for one person to harvest from this huge food forest. So this really important things to think about when you're making your own food forest. Diversity, diversity, diversity. So I hope this was an enjoyable video, gave you some ideas on things you can do in your own food forest, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.